Hello, fam. I took the liberty of sharing today's devotional by Wally Armstrong in his book entitled Practicing the Presence of Jesus. And the title of today's devotional is The Problem of Pain. Now, for some of us, this is already rather taboo. We'd rather not talk about it. The fact that it is a glaring reality and we cannot escape it as far as life on this planet is concerned. But how exactly do we deal with it if we don't acknowledge its presence? Yeah. So, uh, I'll try to walk through this with you step by step, and I'll try to slow down a bit so that we can really realize how it can be handled with the proper assistance. You see, the text reference for the problem of pain used here is John 16:33, but let me start with a quote by a couple of fellas called Henry Cloud and John Townsend. And it says, the ultimate answer then to the problem of pain is a person. It is God Himself. John chapter 16, verse 33, from the NIV version, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart. I have overcome the world. You know what I love the most about this verse is that someone else dealt with what I can't handle for me. And the best part of that is it's not just for me as an individual, but for every one of us who not only acknowledges but believes that Jesus Christ loves us. This is the very core of the gospel. God knew that, especially in the Old Testament, Philip Yancey makes mention of this in his book called Disappointment with God. He's the kind of God who would speak a word, and with that would come natural calamities. There will be earthquakes, lightning will flash from the sky. Today, maybe it would follow before, it would come before a tsunami. But as far as the Israelites are concerned, the only body of water that they experienced was the Red Sea. But just think about that. God was so wise that He needed to come up with a version of Himself that can be relatable for men such as ourselves. Someone whom you can engage in an argument, you could address and ask questions if you have doubts or if something doesn't seem clear. And up until this time, this is why Christianity is massively misrepresented as far as things mainstream are concerned, and sometimes elements of pop culture mock God. Yeah, that's why. Because only one side of God is represented without seeing the bigger picture. But try to catch this with me, step by step, alright? So, what exactly does the devotional have to say? And it goes like this. People seek pain relief in many forms today. Aspirin, ibuprofen, prescription muscle relaxers. And those are just for physical pain. To alleviate emotional pain, some try to medicate themselves in other ways. Alcohol, legal and illegal drugs, work, relationships, hours spent trolling the internet. Now let me just pause that for a while. Hours spent trolling in the internet. Who would have thought? You might be somebody who doesn't intoxicate himself with substances, but you are not a blessing to anyone who encounters you online. So you see, evil has a way of sneaking itself into our system in whichever way, and if we are not on our guard, if we are not vigilant, just imagine what wild things can be triggered with our wild imaginations. So, think about this too. Still, the pain lingers like an unwanted guest. But pain is usually the symptom of an underlying problem. Unless the problem is dealt with, the symptom of pain will remain. Jesus assured His disciples that they would face the pain of persecution and suffering, symptoms of living in a fallen world. But He also gave them some good news. Jesus never met a problem He could not overcome. Yes, His followers would go through deep waters, but they would not be alone and defenseless. Jesus would be with them. None of us will pass through this life pain-free. But the ultimate pain reliever still is, and always will be, Jesus. You see, this is also what Pastor Peter Tanchi said in one of his sermons that stood out in the Facebook feed. God never promised a storm-free or a pain-free life. He did promise a storm-proof life. You remember what the disciples were pleading with when the storm was about to engulf their boat? Jesus was asleep and then they were saying, Master, tayo mga Pinoy, bossing, malulunod na tayo, paano na? Jesus is with us in the storm. A storm-proof life. Another way of saying this is, hey, I can actually get by because the biggest source is by my side. In English, they also refer to this as Jesus has my back. So let me encourage you with this one last version of the same verse, but it can be found from the New Testament Pinoy version. Sinabi ko to sa inyo para magkaroon kayo ng kapayapaan sa pakikipag-isa nyo sa akin. Papahirapan kayo sa mundong ito, pero lakasan nyo ang loob nyo, tinalo ko na ang mundo. That does not need any additional insight or commentary. We cannot handle it on our own. And God knew that right from the get-go. That's why we have Him to thank. We cannot take credit for almost anything. No, not almost anything. We cannot take credit for anything at all. But God. This is why the more we deceive ourselves, the more that we take steps in walking this planet, believing that it's all about me, well, expect the unexpected, as they always say. So think about these things, kapatid. Brothers and sisters who might stumble upon this. But be encouraged, and may the presence and love of the Lord Jesus Christ be with you always. And if there's any prayer concern, or any way that I can include you in my prayer channel, don't hesitate. God bless you all.